Hi, Sean.
Hi Adam, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How is everything in Guyana?
Wonderful. You're looking smashing as always.
Well, thank you. I've got lots of El Dorado bling behind me and botanicals and all kinds of things here at Rare Tea Cellar. So
I
kind of makes
love
it
the
easy. So
We
we're going
should
to have some
switch
fun
places.
today.
Oh yes.
All right. Well, I think if you want to kind of start and tell the tale of El Dorado and Demerara rum, and then I'll chime in here and there, and we'll make some cocktails, we'll taste some things, and let's get it rolling.
Excellent. All right, so El Dorado, what a legend. Really started when the British explorer Walter Raleigh came to these parts looking for that lost city of gold, that gilded city of gold, and discovered instead other forms of gold, which today, we are, very proud to cherish. The legend of the liquid gold that's El Dorado, captured in the bottle. So from 1670, our history has been in rum production, and it has survived in large part through the people, through the methods, through the equipment, and in many ways through the very thick strand that runs through the country as a result of this heritage and its association with rum. Um, People often wonder what makes El Dorado, what makes Demerara rum so special. And I like to think of it in terms of the five P's. Um, the first is that as a product, there's a very distinctive character that really sets it apart from anything else. Uh, so our rums can really cover a very wide gamut of flavor profiles, starting from very light, almost rummy, barely rummy, almost neutral, to light-bodied rums that have a variety of flavor profiles, covering greenish sugarcane, which is of course the raw material that it all originates from, to a collection of medium-bodied rums with fruity and floral aromas, with quite a wide bouquet of potential aromas coming through. And of course, the heavy-bodied spirits that are woodier and certainly a lot more potty. All right, so just that wide diversity of product gives Demerara a distinct advantage. It's a flavor profile almost that it has become associated with. So that's the first P.
Sean, on that Demerara, I know being at the distillery, one thing that was uh, really set in my mind was being at the distillery and actually seeing the Demerara River and seeing where the sugarcane is growing, really in your backyard. It's such a an agriculturally driven spirit. Really has such a terroir and soul to it because of being right there with where the sugarcane is different than anywhere else in the world. Maybe could you expand a little bit more on just Demerara sugar, how that is different than other sugars?
Absolutely. So that's the second of our P's, the place. Uh, like you mentioned, it's in Demerara County of Guyana. So it's a region, it's a certain geography, it's a certain topography, it's a certain soil type, it's a certain collection of environmental and atmospheric conditions, all of which influence not only the growth of the sugarcane, which then obviously affects the molasses quality that we take into our process, but it also impacts the fermentation process of that molasses. So, for instance, there are entire bevy of natural microfloral species. So, wild yeast, for example, native wild yeast, native fungi of various sorts, all of which interact with the fermentation process, either because they come through airborne interactions that eventually get embedded into the process, or because the molasses, by virtue of how it is processed from the sugarcane, inherits some of that carryover, rich microbiological diversity. So there are a lot of things going on, and the fact that we are so close to the bank of the Demerara River obviously helps, because it means that all of those effects get intensified. So yes, the place definitely imparts that sense of terroir to the quality that we get coming out. Yeah.
Now,
So
should
those
probably
are two.
remind everyone also that there's a Q&A on the screen as well. So if you do have questions that we'll try and cover as much as we can, but if there's a particular question you have for Sean or myself, those can go up and we'll make sure to hit those as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to ask questions at any point. I want us to be as interactive as possible. So the third of those P's relates to our process, which is another very distinctive thing for us. Our methods have been preserved since the 1670s. And in a nutshell, it's very traditional. It's a craft approach. It's an artisanal approach. It's an approach that emphasizes producing a product where every single batch, in small batches, has the full flavor profile we're going after. So, of course, over the period of centuries, we have refined how we define our products. And so, for example, even our lightest rum, we have defined what particular flavor notes we expect to come through, just how much green sugarcane leaf we expect, just as one example. And we have reduced a lot of that to the sort of chemical profile that contributes to those flavors. So every product that we produce is distilled directly with that full body, that full aroma, that full taste profile. And so it lends itself to an incredibly wide range of rums that eventually get blended in the El Dorado range. So definitely our process has been preserved over all these centuries. Is that what you saw when you were here in Guyana too? I'm sure you tasted some of our fresh rums.
It was. I mean, it was amazing to see the process go from the sugar cane to the open top fermenters, and then I think what makes El Dorado so special and distinct, in addition to obviously the Demerara, is the amount of stills that you have, and that's something that continues to fascinate me. That you have such a palette, both which to choose from of the rum blends, but also how you can take that special Demerara sugar that's fermented and make completely different styles of rum within one distillery because you have so many different stills.
Absolutely. That's our fourth P. That P relates to the plant. We have over a dozen different stills on property, covering literally every single variation you can think about. So we have column stills of 2, 3, 4, and 5 columns. We have pot stills, double pot, single pot. We have stills made with different materials of construction. So, for example, copper or stainless steel or combinations thereof. We have pot stills made of wood, which have been preserved from their original construction. And we have pot stills made of metal as well, predominantly copper. So just that wide diversity of distilling equipment means that the end product coming out of those different stills really gives a wide arsenal of different products. And anyone visiting our distillery and sampling, say for example, the fresh distillate from the double pot still, or the fresh distillate from our metal coffee still, or the wooden coffee still, they're so different that one finds it difficult to believe that they all come from exactly the same feedstock. But yes, it does. But just that diversity of plant and equipment gives us that advantage. I see a question coming through here. Can we talk about what's added after distillation? That is sugar, if any, water, etc. So I should talk first about the aging process and lead into that question because I think one lends itself naturally to that. One of the things I have started to encourage visitors to our plant to do is to taste fresh distillate, meaning distillate coming directly off the stills. And without exception, people have been amazed that for high strength, full strength distillate, fresh, hot, still hot, just off the still, they can detect flavor already without an overbite coming through. So that's the first thing. We're starting with a spirit that, because of its complex profile coming off the still, it lends itself to maturation very readily. All right. Now it's aged for respective period of time, and so it may be 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, depending on the mark. And in that process, what we have found is that some, for example, residual sugars develop. There are also some compounds that are extracted from the barrel aging process. So some vanillins, for example, which results in some of the vanilla flavor that may be detected. Some components of the rum may develop into other notes, for example, there may be cinnamon spicy notes that develop, and again, there's the maturation of those chemicals present in the rum naturally that result in that. So I'm saying all of this to say that there is no need for addition of sugar to our rums. The rums are aged for the respective periods. they are then blended, and so after blending, they go through an approval process, much like any place else. And then they are chill filtered depending on just how long it was aged, because we don't want to have sediments developing in the bottle, diluted, and finally sent for bottling after all of that. Now, I know that there has been some concern about the levels of sugars detected in El Dorado. And to address that directly, what we have found is that because of the traditional methods that were used, certainly at the time when El Dorado was launched, some of those rum marks were aged with caramel. All right, and so, for example, the first release of the El Dorado 15 in 1993 would have inherited stock of the metal coffee still and the wooden coffee still that at that time in the 80s were aged with caramel. Um, that is a practice that was continued until the early 2000s. Um, and what we have done is to assess rums that were aged during that period and rums that were aged since. And we have found that the amount of these sugars that develop in the aging process is significantly less than rums that were aged in earlier periods. But of course, we are pulling from stock that have been aged for quite a long time. So, for example, our current batch of 15-year-old really was put down in about 1999, 1998, between 1998 and 2000, during that period, when we very much still age a lot of those rums with caramel. All right, so the result is that there is some amount of sugars detected, but of course, as we progress towards using rums that would have been aged since 2003, we expect to find that the amount of sugars in the rums would develop. And obviously that would come of age, depending on the age of the rum it goes into, somewhere between 2 to 3 years, perhaps 5 years in the case of the 15 and 21 years old. All right, so no sugar is added. It's all natural. A lot of it develops in the barrel, and it was, I guess, made more pronounced because of the practice of aging with caramel. But we have moved away from that, and we have instead moved towards aging in once used bourbon whiskey barrels that are freshly procured. So a lot of fresh wood, which we have found gives just as much maturation without the need for caramel addition. I've said a bit there. I don't really want to chime in at this point.
Well, I think let's. I think a good point here is maybe let's start with some of the clear rums, because those are the purest expression of the distillate before you get all of the complexity that's come from the wood aging. And I'm getting a little bit thirsty, and I'm getting excited about the kind of the year of the daiquiri for Tail. So, if you don't mind, I'm gonna walk us through a Magnolia daiquiri, and then as I do this, I'd love you to talk a little bit about a couple of different rums. I'm going to be using the Superior White, but I think it would be also really interesting for you to talk about the 3-year white, because it's such an interesting mark of people not realizing that you can have a white rum that has aged in wood, and how that develops a profile as well. And this particular cocktail, you could really use either of those two marks.
Absolutely. All right, so let me preface anything else I would say by just highlighting 4 of those 14 stills that we have on our property. So there's the 4-column French Saval still, which is a stainless steel still, 4 columns as I mentioned, and it's very versatile. It can produce over 9 different kinds of spirits, ranging from light, almost neutral, to medium-bodied with a variety of different flavors coming through. So that's the French Saval still. There is also the wooden EHP coffee still, the legendary one, the only one of its kind that's still in operation. That still actually has been in operation since 1880, approximately, and continues to be in operation today. Another still that's one of a kind is our double wooden pot still. That still has been installed since 1732. It's the oldest still we have on the property. It's approaching 300 years old.
and
of course makes a very distinctive spirit. And finally,
it's
the metal
unbelievable to
component.
see it working as well. I mean, that's
Sorry?
to see that 300-year-old still working and gurgling away, just unbelievable. I mean, it's the amount of energy it takes to distill something in this 300-year-old wood is remarkable, and that's why the rums that come off of it are so rich and full-bodied and massively complex, because it's you see the amount of love that goes into just getting little drops out of the still. It's just awe-inspiring.
Exactly, exactly. So as you go through the cocktails and use the different expressions from the El Dorado range, it's certainly beneficial to see how the stills that were used to produce that, whatever marks, whichever SKUs you use, how the stills impart that character. So you've mentioned you want to first use the Superior White, which is a very solid standard rum, flavorful for a rum that is surprisingly as young as it is. It draws significantly from the French Saval still. So it's a combination of two different rums from the Saval still, both of which are light body. One of which tends to be, it tends to remind me of green sugarcane leaves. And the second has a bit more of a fruitier character. So the blend of those two rums, lightly aged and then decolorized, results in a spirit that is, although young, is still relatively smooth for a rum of its age. It doesn't carry a large burn or bite, which people are often surprised by from a standard rum of its kind. But also, it's a rum that has a lot of those, what I say, the tropical flavors. It's light-bodied, but yet fruit-forward. And it just demonstrates the versatility of the Saval still to really give spirits that, although light-bodied, still carry a particular profile that can impress a mixologist like yourself. So yes, I too would be keen to see what daiquiri you can make from it.
All right. Well, I can't wait any longer. So first, I'm just going to have a little bit of a nose first as well, because one of the things obviously you want in a great daiquiri is start with a great rum, and you want to balance it so that you can taste that base distillate, and then also make it refreshing and delicious with a balance of sweet and sour. So hope you'll raise a glass with me soon, Shaun. All right. So what I'm going to start with is 60 mils. Actually, well, let's do 45 mils. It's still a little bit early. We can always make a second one. So which is about an ounce and a half of El Dorado Superior. And again, the 3-year white is really gorgeous as well. That's going to even broaden your complexity on this as well. So then we're going to do the juice of half a lime, which is half an ounce or roughly 15 milliliters. Just give us some nice, bright, fresh citrus. And then we've got a magnolia shrub. And because of Tails obviously being home to South Louisiana, magnolia is so synonymous with the South. This is magnolia and Steen's cane vinegar in a beautiful shrub. So kind of combination of sweet and sour. And again, just 15 milliliters or half an ounce there. And that's just going to balance out. We've got about 65% of this is the rum. So the rum is really going to be what's driving the bus here. And we just want a little bit of that citrus to pop and a little bit of that magnolia for some nice top notes. Because with a white rum, it gets such beautiful light notes and top notes on it that bringing a little bit of floral, I think, will help kind of pop all of that. So this is a nice shake. We did shake it up, right, Todd? All right, and we've got a proper daiquiri coupe here. Let's see how this little puppy turned out. I'm feeling I'll be making a few of these for you in New Orleans.
Absolutely, can't wait.
All right, there we go. Now, you can go very classic on this. A beautiful lime wheel, I think, is always very elegant, very sexy on a daiquiri, but some beautiful winter grapefruit as well is really nice. Of course, if down in New Orleans, Tatsuma is kind of the wild tangerine down there. But this will give a little kind of note towards a Hemingway with the grapefruit, and just a little bit of that oil. I think will just give us a little extra nice pop with the Magnolia. So let's see how this is going to taste here. We need to figure out, Google needs to figure out smell-o-vision. Be able to smell that beautiful rum and Magnolia and grapefruit. So that'd be great fun. All right. Cheers.
Cheers. I'm getting thirsty just looking at you.
Well, you'll have to come to the El Dorado daiquiri time out in Tails, and have all you want. You can be the personal quality control for me. This test drive, make sure each cocktail is perfect.
You certainly don't have to ask me twice. All right, we have another question coming through, Adam, from Adam Gullett, and his question is all of our product a blend of pot and column still? Any pot still only, any column still only? So I figure this is a nice seg into, I guess, the next rum you want to talk about, which is the 8-year-old. But before we get to that, and to answer the question directly, so we have rums that are blends of column still only, and as well as rums that are blends of column and pot still. We do not have any pot still only blends, but we do have our single distillate pot still rum. That's the PM single distillate rum. And of course, we have single distillate column stills as well. So to give an example, to contrast our 12 and 15 years, we'll seg back to the 8-year to get the cocktail going, but just to address the question. The 12-year-old is actually a blend of our wooden coffee still, the wooden continuous coffee still, as well as the metal continuous coffee still. Now, both of those rums give very aromatic, very fruity, very floral rums, but at the same time, they cover the different parts of the fruit and floral spectra. So, so that's an example, the 12 years, of a blend that is completely column still, but of course different stills, as opposed to the 15, which has both of those stills, but also has our single as well as our double wooden pot still. And it certainly changes the overall profile, but also the finish in the 15 relative to the 12. So just to address that first question there. I see another question. So also, aside from tasting purposes, is there an approximate pattern that is followed for the percentages of in your blend? And the answer is yes. We do have formulation that specify for each of the products we have out there. What are the particular blend? What are the age range we're targeting? We do, however, there may be seasonal, however slight, that we have to compensate. So the blending process tends to be in advance of requirement for market. For example, those rums that would be sold have been blended already, and 20 beyond are now. So to answer your question, yes, we do taste for consistent on the taste and the nose, and so on, but also formulation and tweaks as a. But I know very clearly with the 8. So perhaps we can talk a bit about that. Like the 50, the 8-year-old is also a blend. Essentially a blend of light rums from the still. In fact, one of the lightest rums. And the rationale there is that we wanted a rum that can extract some of the oaky, some of the woody notes from the barrels, but without too many other flavors playing a part as well. All right. So one tasting the 8-year-old certainly can get a bit of that wood, a bit of that bitter woodiness that comes interspersed with the other aromatics. Now those other fruity aromatics, those sweet aromatic notes, come from the other components of that blend. One of which is the EHP wooden column still. So again, there's some fruitiness coming there. Also the metal coffee still. So yet more fruitiness coming there, as well as some amount, a small dash of our double pot still that just goes between those two. So the result with the 8-year-old is that we get a spirit that is very versatile. It's certainly complex enough that it can stand up as a fairly good sipper, being a nice balance between sweet and bitter notes with a collection of nuttiness and other notes coming through in the experience. But also, it's a good mixer just because it stands up well and allows for those very flavor profiles to kind of flow through in the mix. Now, Adam, I think, is going to make a Manhattan for us and show us just how delicious the 8-year-old can be.
Yes. This is one of my favorite things to do is rum Manhattan, and the 8-year is such a gorgeous canvas for it. So what we're going to do is I'd like to do roughly a 2-to-1 Manhattan, and so we'll use our El Dorado as the base. And I think, Shaun, talk a little bit about the climate also in Guyana, because I always kind of think of like an 8-year-old Caribbean rum is more like a 15-year-old bourbon if you're kind of looking at what's happened in the wood over time.
Absolutely. It actually ties was asked by Adam Seger, asking whether there's a sweet saturation. We think somewhere between 8 and 12 tends to be that sweet spot, depending on the application. Of course, the product under the microscope now is the 8-year. We're just looking at that bottle you have there. So that 8 is actually fairly advanced given the tropical climate under which it was aged. Of course, the Demerara County and the distillery, where we're located, is just about 5 degrees above the equator. So we're very equatorial. So what that means for us is that the temperature it's hot, it's humid, but it's also fairly steady year-round. So as a result, the aging process tends to be fairly accelerated because all of those aging reactions that take place in the barrel are certainly catalyzed by the tropical climatic conditions under which aging takes place. There is a cost for that, and the cost is that the angel share by way of evaporation tends to be a lot higher than in temperate climates. We typically get per year somewhere between 5 and 7% losses, as opposed to 2 or 3 under more controlled environmental conditions in more temperate climates. But it does come with the advantage that the rum matures a lot faster. We've actually been in partnership with some distilleries in northern climates, and aging rums have found that the maturation process is about 2 to 3 times, and in one case we were actually advised that it was found to be even 4 times as fast in the tropics than it is in the more temperate climate. But whichever it is, I guess the bottom line is that the aging process definitely makes the spirit a lot more mature. So an 8-year-old Demerara rum is a lot more mature than an 8-year-old rum that comes from somewhere in the colder north. And yes, somewhere between 8 to 12 tends to be that sweet spot.
All right. Well, so I've got the 8-year in my mixing glass now, and you can see just the color on it. It's just absolutely gorgeous. So it's really fun to even just take a moment to enjoy the patina you're getting from the barrels. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make a kind of a bespoke vermouth, and it's going to be with actually an American Amaro called Balsam that's based on an 18th century classic Italian sweet vermouth formula. So all of the botanicals, the wormwood and the exotic citrus and the fruits and the vanilla and the spices, everything but the wine. And so what it allows the mixologist, or bartender, or consumer is to use the wine of their choice. So they can really create a bespoke vermouth. And since we're using such a beautiful rum, we're going to do a little Barolo. We're not messing around with the vermouth today, Shaun. So just a touch here. This is going to be 10 milliliters of the balsam. So it takes just a little bit because it's quite intense. And the ratio is just 3 parts of of wine, and a beautiful red wine I'm using, a little bit of Barolo here, and then 1 part of the Balsam. And so that's going to make up about 1 ounce or 30 mils, and then we've got our 60 mils of the El Dorado 8. And kind of solves the problem of that bottle of vermouth that you open up and let's say Carpano Antico, which is one of my favorites, and that first couple days it's just magical. It's like a bottled cocktail. But after day 3 or 4, it starts to lose kind of its edge. Very similar to when you open a bottle of wine. And so this way you can have a bottle that you're open, you enjoy drinking, something maybe you're pouring by the glass, and you can use that. Obviously, if you're caring about your base distillate and using something beautiful like an El Dorado 8 or one of the other marks from El Dorado for Manhattan, then you want to care about your vermouth as well. So we're going to do 30 mils of the Barolo. And this is also going to give us a really beautiful color, a combination of the Nebbiolo grapes from the Barolo and then that beautiful patina from the 8 years in the Caribbean. All right, so I'm going to do something a little bit different as well. And again, from being down in Guyana, it was a real treat being down there in January and February when the weather is not so great in Chicago. But just about all year, I mean, your climate, it's a very, very close to the equator, so you've got a very, very hot climate. Not dissimilar to South Louisiana. And so I love sort of this trend of traditional up cocktails, like a Manhattan, you're typically seeing up, just serve them in a chilled rocks glass. So we've just got a few cubes in here, sitting here for a few minutes so that the glass is nice and cold. But I'm going to actually serve this on just one big rock in a rocks glass. It's going to keep it a bit colder, and again, kind of keeping an idea of taking a Manhattan. And when you pull that into the rum category and also pull it in the summertime, just create a beautiful brown and stirred summer cocktail. And with the ice, lightens it up, keeps the chill on there really nicely on a hotter day. And also, as that ice gently melts, you're reducing the proof of the cocktail, makes it a little bit lighter and refreshing. And actually, the cocktail kind of evolves. As the alcohol decreases and you get a little bit more water mixed in, you're getting some of the more delicate top notes. And just I think, creates a very unique Manhattan experience. So now what we're going to do is just going to stir this. And I like to do 33 stirs. And this is actually something I learned from Peter Dorelli at Tales a few years ago. He, of course, 30 years at the Savoy, and he's stirred a few martinis and Manhattans in his day. And I asked him how many times he stirs his cocktails. And he didn't come out with 33. He basically sat there at the table with an imaginary spoon and kind of went through something he had done for decades and decades and came up with 7 Mississippi. So I kind of translate that to 33. And I found it's just enough dilution without over-diluting, but giving a really beautiful chill, not introducing air bubbles, so you end up with just a velvety, silky, very, very sexy Manhattan. So now I've dumped the ice out, so I've got a nice chilled glass, nice big oversized 2-inch by 2-inch cube here, and that's going to go right on top. And just gives a little, I think, a little extra decadence with a nice piece of ice. And now I'm going to finish this off with just a little bit of Fee cardamom bitters. Cardamom you see quite a bit in everything from curries to all kinds of different dishes when you get Caribbean influence and Guyanese influence. It's really, really beautiful aromatic spice. And then I'm going to do just some homemade marrachinos. And these recipes are up on the site as well. We did these for the 8-year, so it's really easy. You take a ball jar. Sour tart cherries are my favorite. They have a little bit more acidity, but black cherries, if you can't get the sour cherries, those work as well. In the summertime, obviously great to get them fresh, but in the wintertime, get a good quality sour cherry or black cherry frozen that's already pitted. And then what we're going to do is, with this jar, you fill it up 1/3 with El Dorado 8-year, and then 1/3 with pure maple syrup, and then to the top with hum, which is a rum infused with hibiscus and ginger and cardamom. Again, bringing some of those island spices into it. It makes just a really, really beautiful sherry. So I always like to do 2 cherries because they're delicious, and let them kind of fall to the bottom. It's kind of your reward when you've finished your Manhattan of having that cherry, and you've got, it's really kind of marrying everything together. It's like when you make pasta and you save a little bit of the pasta water and mix that in with the sauce, very traditional Italian. It's sort of using the rum in the maracchinos and then the rum in the Manhattan. It's kind of reuniting them together. It's giving the cherries a nice little bath in there, and just makes it really quite lovely. So again, I wish you had smell-o-vision, because all those complexities from the 8-year and that aging and the beautiful vermouth and a little bit of the cardamom, it's just, I feel like I'm in Guyana smelling the fermenters going along, and the old PM still gurgling away. So cheers.
Cheers again. Cheers again.
All right.
Delicious. Delicious. All right, so I see another question coming through. This time from Adam. Welcome on. And it's, what advice do you have for someone who wants to create your own spirit? I guess for me, a lot of it has to do with authenticity and character, because consumers know what they want, and so they want to know that they're buying something that has character, that has a story, something that's authentic. And so pursuing something that is genuine, that has some story behind it, is important. Also, I think it's very important to pursue flavor profiles in any distillate, as opposed to relying on post-distillation blending to achieve flavors as desired. It's a lot more authentic when the distillate itself comes through with whatever profile is being pursued, but also it makes the spirit mature a lot more organically. And that has been one of the main advantages of El Dorado, the fact that we age all of our rums individually before blending, but each of those rums have the character we're looking for. And so depending on the kind of spirit we're trying to create, we can then choose which of the individual components with their respective characters would best combine to give us what we're looking for. So if we want a bourbon-like spirit, for example, that is very volatile and that packs a lot of flavor, we can choose which of the 24 spirits or rums we currently produce, we can choose for that blend. Or likewise, we want a more refined cognac. We can choose again which of those different rums from the wide library that we do have we want to blend for that product. So for me, those are very important. Pursuing flavors through distillation, and of course ensuring that there's a story, there's a character, that there's a moral motivating the entire process. Because at the end of the day, it's not only about marketing, it's about respecting the consumers and basically putting something out there that can resonate with the consumer. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, I love that you said talking about the moral and soul of the spirit, because I think that's such a key thing that's turned me on to El Dorado for the last 20 years. I've been a fan long before I had met you, because of not only the quality of what's in the bottle, but because of the rich history and the quality of the ingredients that go into it, and the true integrity of the spirit. So I would definitely say for someone who's looking to create their own spirit, have it something that's very much an expression of your philosophies, what you believe in, and get absolutely obsessed with the ingredients that you're using. That's so incredibly important, because you can't make just like a chef can't make great food without great ingredients. A distiller, a winemaker, a bartender can't make a great beverage without starting with great ingredients. And obviously then there's a great deal of care that goes into the making of it. So start with that. Make sure that it has a soul. It's a real expression of something that is really a signature to yourself. And then from there, it's like anything with entrepreneurialism. It's a combination of of a great adventure, oftentimes quite scary, but quite satisfying at the same time. And as our kind of industry progresses, one of the most exciting things for me to see is every year Tales is going down and seeing more and more bartenders, more and more mixologists coming to market with whether it's spirit collaborations or bitters or new bar tool solutions. And to see that innovation coming from behind the bar is so exciting for our industry. I think it's something that's really moving us forward. And I'm seeing more and more of that innovation coming from really behind the stick. And it's an area that if you take the passion you have behind your cocktails and you translate that into a bottle, that's the most important part. And never lose that focus as you go through all of the stumbling blocks and challenges with the TTB and all of the other complexities that it comes to bring a product to market. Don't lose focus of that soul. And it's amazing to me with El Dorado how long this brand has been around and how much deep history there is going back to stills as old as 300 years old, that it'd be so easy for you guys to say, well, this will look great, we'll keep this in our museum, but the fact that it's still being used and still making rum, and that's true soul, that's true integrity. And so I'd say to anyone looking at doing their own thing, look at El Dorado as an inspiration, because they've done it right from the beginning and they continue to. And it'd be very, very easy for them not to, and they've stuck to their guns, and that's huge.
Well said, Adam. Well said. I return to the theme of the 5 Ps, and I've mentioned only 4 of them so far. So if we can seg a bit into that. The 5th of those, and it really resonates with the theme of authenticity, is the people. We are still very traditional in our approach to rum making, and a big part of that are the people who have been with us, in many cases for decades. So, for example, if you were to look at our distillation operators, they have been with us between 25 to 35 years in the main, but we also have them for the last 4 years interacting with a new batch that we have trained, who've been with us for those 4 years, and so that allows for not only for continuity, it allows for transfer, for knowledge sharing, and so another 50 years from now, one can rest assured that El Dorado will still be made pretty much the same way that it has been made 50 years prior. It's the reason why our methods have persisted, they have really been preserved for so long, because our people are very long-lived in the process, and because there's planning that supports the transition intergenerationally. Our people are very important, they're very central, and they're obviously a key part in preserving the heritage in terms of our production processes.
Well, even to the point that I think it would be really interesting for everyone to understand that your shareholders are actually the people of Guyana, which is just amazing.
Absolutely. We have over 9,000 shareholders, and only 3 of those 9,200 shareholders own more than 5% of the stock, and less than 20 for sure. So you could imagine very much the mom and pop having a stake in what is El Dorado today, the global brand. In fact, tomorrow is our annual shareholders meeting. And so we expect to see quite a large share of those 9,000 shareholders coming in. And these really are the ordinary, people of the soil who have invested in El Dorado even before it was as well known as it is today, and who today take pride in knowing that El Dorado is, the first really global brand that has come out of Guyana. So very traditional, and people remain very much a focus in everything that we do. All right, Adam, I see you lining up there our steppers. So I'd like to.
Right. Well, I thought it might be fun to take us through kind of a little bit of a vertical, because you've done a great job talking about the different stills and kind of the palette that you have. But what I think is most interesting is that there's some general misunderstanding that the 12, 15, and the 21, the difference is just the age of the rums. But it's actually really the blending that makes them each so distinct and have such a distinct personality. And it's your ability to take the expressions from these different stills and different marks, and yes, have something that has an age statement on it, but really the personality from the 12 and the 15 is so different. And it's not just of the 3 years apart, it's really because of the stills that go into it. So the 12 is one of my favorites, so I'm going to have a little nip of this while you talk about the 12-year-old.
All right. So the 12 is a blend of our wooden coffee still as well as the metal coffee still. The wooden coffee still, as mentioned earlier, dates back to 80. So it's one of our stills, and it's still one of its kind of operation. It tends to be fairly inefficient these days because one can imagine with age and being made of wood, there is going to be some amount of leaking. So that is controlled. But what we lose in efficiency, we more than make up in terms of quality. I can certainly tell you that the spirit that comes from that wooden coffee still is distinct even from the metal coffee still. Even though in principle the two are designed on the same concepts and the same principles, yet the expression of the final product, they come out to be very different. One, a lot softer on the fruitier notes, the other a lot heavier on the floral notes. But still with a bouquet that's something of a mixture of both, with those important variations. What's important is that because both of them tend to emphasize those flavorful compounds, those flavorful esters of various kinds that will result in those fruity and floral notes, when blended together, it really becomes almost like an orgy of aromatics. So just in the first sip, the first contact with that first sip, just evaporate. It opens up. It releases all of those aromatics. It gives the full mouth appearance. It just releases the entire cavity. And that for us, we think is why the 12 years has really stood out, because it's flavorful, but it then dries out and almost invites another sip to come after. So you want to sit back, have a nice experience with a flavorful rum that keeps you going and going. The 12 years is that spirit.
Absolutely. Now, as we talk about the 15 year, there's a question kind of for both of us. Shaun, about the flavor qualities you want in a rum, your sipping versus versatility for cocktails. I'll have you take that first, and then I'll talk a little bit about rich flavors I look for in a rum and how to pull those out in a cocktail. So,
sure.
Shaun, why don't you start on this one?
Yes. So for sipping rums, I guess a lot of it depends on the kind of experience that we at El Dorado want to create, or the kind of consumer that we want to resonate with. Because consumers tend to pigeonhole themselves, certainly historically. So they may be bourbon drinkers or scotch drinkers or cognac drinkers, and we certainly want to play with all of those consumers. All right? So there may be a combination of fruity flavors that can help, or sometimes it's a combination of other aromatic flavors. So some nuttiness, for example, or it may be some spiciness, or it may be some woodiness that lends themselves to the kind of flavor character that those consumers prefer. Take, for example, a Scotch drinker. So we know single malts are sippers, and there's a particular profile that any Scotch whiskey would impart to the palate. And so for us, if we want to create a sipper that can resonate with a Scotch drinker, the profiles that that drinker appreciates must certainly come through in the El Dorado. So take, for example, our 15 years. We use a small portion of our double wooden pots. Now, That double wooden pot still,
pot still.
again, it's
Again,
quite
it's
amazing.
quite
It's
amazing.
workhorse. It's the only one of its kind. It's
It's
almost 300
almost
years.
300
But more
years. But more
importantly, it
importantly,
produces a
it
spirit
produces a
that's
spirit
fresh.
that breath.
It reminds me
Reminds
almost
me almost
of, let's
of
say you're on
let's say
a
you're in
pasture.
a pasture.
So there's a
So
combination
there's
of
a
the
combination
manure,
of
the,
manure,
the
the
organic in the
organic in
soil,
the soil,
interacting with the
interacting with
green grass just after a rain. That nice earthy feel certainly matures and expands during the aging process. And so with the 15, there's almost a dryish, peat-like character that comes through, and it's because of that double wooden pot still. So a sipper of a Scotch whiskey would certainly resonate with what the 15 offers. Um, as opposed to, let's say, a cocktail, we may wish to have a cocktail that doesn't rush ahead of the, so take, for example, a daiquiri. That doesn't rush ahead of the fruit flavors, nor does it stay behind and get diluted um, so that the entire experience become uneven. So the 3 years, for example, is a good example because it's flavorful. It offers coconut, it offers some citrus, it offers some zest. It's a lot of tropical fruitiness that comes through. But because it's so smooth, it works its way evenly and homogeneously with the cocktail. Uh, so first, the flavors complement well with the other notes that come from the daiquiri. But also because it's even, the first sip is as good as the last. All right. So definitely in creating a product, we bear in mind the intended use, whether sipping or for cocktail, and we configure the blend to resonate with the kind of experience a sipper or a mixer would expect. Adam?
Adam?
Well, I think, the 15, I think an interesting thing you kind of reference a little bit is Scotch. And if you're going to make a really kind of broad stroke generalization or description of the 12 to the 15, 12 a little bit softer, a little bit more kind of feminine, more Burgundian, if you will, and the 15 a little bit more kind of Scotch, Bordeaux, a little bit more masculine notes. But with either one, I think just recognizing there's so much already going on in the bottle, and these are certainly gorgeous rums for sipping on their own, which I'm certainly enjoying the 15-year now. But they can make remarkable canvases for cocktails. Just really, really respect that base spirit because there's so much soul and integrity that went into it and so much flavor and complexity. Because the El Dorado by nature is almost like a bottled cocktail when you start looking at what Shaun is doing with all these different stills, all these different marks, all these different age rums, and then combining those to create something that has such a symphony, or I think your better word was orgy of aromas and flavors. And so I think us as stewards of what you're doing as bartenders, as mixologists, really respecting that base spirit and making sure that that is something that you're going to taste in the final cocktail and just bring some things that are going to bring it to a new dimension, to just a new way of enjoying it. The 15-year is it's just beautiful. I think things that you would think of an aged Scotch or something that's got even come to mind of a smokier spirit. Well, some of you may do with a mezcal or even like the Corsair triple smoke, where you have a little bit more of those darker, richer, more brooding flavors. That can be something that can be really fun. Where the 12-year, like the 8, gorgeous in a Manhattan, absolutely beautiful because the sweet notes with the sweet vermouth, they really just become very, very seamless. But as far as kind of finding notes and rums to look for from creating cocktails, you really got to start with getting to know your base spirit, nosing it, tasting it, finding what's speaking to you from your flavor memory, from your palate memory, and then pulling from there because that's where it's going to make something that's a personal connection to the spirit and the cocktail you're creating, and ultimately that's going to make a more interesting expression of the drink, of when you're really paying attention to that base spirit. And there's so much here. You've got to just take some time and hang out with it and get to know it, which I'm certainly enjoying.
We can see that. We certainly can. Just to follow up again on the 12, 15, 21. I haven't talked a lot about the 21, so I'll just quickly point out that uh, I like to compare it against the 15 just because it makes the comparison a lot more salient. So whereas the 15-year-old has both the double wooden pot still as well as a single wooden pot still, the 21 has only the single wooden pot still. And the reason for that is we didn't quite want so much of the earthiness of the 15-year-old coming through in the 21. But we wanted enough pot that makes the entire character of the rum a lot silkier, so not quite as effervescent, but moving a little slower, almost like yellow. So we age it longer to achieve that. And the heavier weight of the single pot still relative to the column still also helps to control a lot of those volatiles. So the result is that it's very flavorful, but not in the way the 12 years is very volatile. 21 moves along the volatile very, very smooth. And because the pot is also there's some interesting notes in the entire mix. A bit of leather, some tobacco. And so the combination of those notes along with the fruitiness that is traditionally Demerara really makes for a very nice experience, much like any cognac drinker would enjoy. So the blends are all different, and it's important to note that the age stated in every bottle is a minimum. So the 12 years, every component is at least 12, the 15 the same, the 21-year-old the same. So remember, it's aged in the tropics. So there's very accelerated maturation. There is aging for an authentic period of time or beyond, sometimes a year or two more, depending on availability. And also, from product to product, the blends are configured differently, using different stills, depending on the end experience that we're going after. So I think the 21 is certainly a very nice one to sip on. I see Adam wants to sip over single barrel.
So I know we're kind of close to wrapping up, but wanted to kind of combine a couple last things for the one of the final questions was about determining percentage of certain vintages in your blending, which I think would be interesting to chat about, and then maybe just kind of sum up a little bit with the single barrels, which I know you've got some exciting new things coming out of how those are being presented at the market. But it's always something that's I think hasn't been quite on people's radars, that they can actually acquire rums from single stills from El Dorado, which is so special. So maybe talk a little bit about what's happening with those expressions and availability, but also then how those are combined to make up the 12, the 15, and the 21.
All right, so I'll try to make the best of the time that we have left. So I've talked about earlier about the French Saval still and how versatile that is. I've talked about the double wooden pot still and the impact that has on the finish on the 15-year-old. And I've talked about the legendary wooden coffee still that contrasts itself very nicely from the metal coffee still. Those still being solidly fruity and floral as a medium-bodied rum. So what we thought was that having blended all of those rums together in the 12, 15, and 21, perhaps consumers would want to see those spirits coming through individually, not blended. So, for example, they can assess what exactly makes the double pot still as special as it is. All right. So the single expression attempts to achieve that, and we have 3 of those currently available. There's the PM, which comes from a double wooden pot still. It just screams single malt. All right. There's also the EHP, which comes from the wooden coffee still, and that is an extremely smooth, extremely delicate, very rich butterscotch notes with some amount of peach and apples. So you get the fruitiness coming through, but with a very nice mellowed character. And the third is our ICBU which comes from the French Saval still. So we chose the traditional, the signature Saval still rum mark, and aged that for 12 years, as the entire range of single barrel rums are aged for 12 years. But what's nice about the ICBU is that it has a very nice smoky character. So you get some cedar, you get some tobacco, um, and so stacking up the three single barrel rums against each other, it's hard to believe they come from the same place just because of how different they are. And it really illustrates why there's so much possibility in the El Dorado range because they're blended differently. And seeing how different the starting materials are can obviously explain a lot of those differences. All right. In terms of what new we have coming out, we have extended the single barrel concept to double maturation, sort of exploring if they can be split personalities. So, for example, the PM, if it's aged first in bourbon barrels as it is, how would that diverge if we were to use a different cask? So, for example, what impact would a sherry cask have, or Madeira, or port, or Sauternes, for example? And so we have been pursuing some of those experiments, and very soon the results of some of those will be available for consumers to enjoy. I wouldn't want to preempt our marketing team, but certainly I can warn that a lot of this excitement is very soon to hit the markets.
Perfect. Thank you, Shaun. I think we should wrap up with just letting people know where you're going to be at Tales. I know that El Dorado has a number of different events that you're participating in, because certainly I've enjoyed this immensely, and looking forward to Tales, but I know there's lots of people watching this and hearing about what's going on, and would love to have a chance to meet you and taste the different marks and really continue this exploration of El Dorado. So chat a little bit about what you guys have planned for Tales this year.
Well, a lot of things are still at work. We have in the past done dinners of various sorts. So I'm sure that this year we'll have some sort of restaurant sessions where we can interact with consumers from Tales. I think one of the most exciting features this year is that we'll have a special tasting of some of our rums, some of our special rums that are not commercially available. We have searched our library and we have pulled out a sample of rums that are different, that are offered at cask strength, so there's no dilution, and in many cases involve rum marks that are not used in any of our current blends. Because we have over 24 different rums in our library. So many of those secrets have been tucked away. It gives us future possibilities. And consumers at Tales will definitely get the opportunity to perhaps experience some of this. So a lot to look forward from El Dorado. And yes, just good fun, good spirits, and a lot to take away from Tales. Looking forward to it.
Well, it's going to be an amazing tale, Shaun. And I think following on Twitter @DrinkElDorado is a great way to stay live. Obviously, there's a lot of awesome, exciting things coming up with El Dorado, great things happening with Tales. But really with the premium luxury rum category in general, it's very exciting. And one of the things that I think is most interesting, I had the fortunate time to spend a good chunk of my career in Kentucky, and it was really way before the brown spirit and bourbon renaissance that we're seeing now. And now so many of us are dealing with so many challenges with a lack of aged whiskeys on the market because of just availability. And there is so much great aged rum that is so complex and so interesting and has such a heritage to it that's a real gem. And I really see these aged special rums as being kind of the next thing that what bourbon has done. And a chance to come to Tales and to meet Shaun and taste some cask strength rums that come from stills that are as old as 300 years that just don't exist anywhere else in the world. Can't emphasize how special that is. So if you're watching, spread the word, and let's make sure we get the right people there, because it's a great story to spread, and Tales is a perfect venue for this, and really I think this is rum's time. Couldn't be more excited to spend this last hour with you, Shaun. Can't wait till Tales. And hopefully Google will figure out this smell-o-vision and taste-o-vision thing, or somehow we'll have to do this and have people be able to taste along with us, because this has certainly been a real thrill. So thanks so much, Shaun.
Thank you. It's been fun. And looking forward to Tales. Goodbye, everyone.
All right. Cheers, everybody. Follow at Drink Eldorado on Twitter. That's Shaun Caleb, Master Distiller for Eldorado. I'm Adam Seger. I'm on Twitter at Adam Seger. Always drinking and interesting things and seeing interesting places, including Eldorado, which, again, very close to my heart for a number of years. So look forward to seeing at Tales, and cheers to the year of the daiquiri.
Excellent. Excellent. I know.